I'm Lunaria. I'm a compulsive overeater, bulimic, binge eater, compulsive eater, all the things. And I have been since the very, very inception of my life. My mum, my mum used to say to me, put something in your mouth, save something coming out. And it's something that has rung so true in my life that in my life, if I felt things, if I, be that good or bad, if I was bored, if I talked too much, just put something in your mouth. And that was the story of my life forevermore. And it meant that from a very young age, I was overweight. And I recall being 9 years of age, the first time I ever had that big moment of there's something wrong with my body. We were at a theme park on the Gold Coast, Australia here, and 9 years old, really excited to go to the theme park, the water slides with my big brother and my family, who's a couple of years older than me. And it's the middle of summer, there's kids everywhere. We're standing in a big line of staircase, 7 stories of staircase, standing in line for what feels like 4 hours. It was probably 20 minutes, long enough for a 9-year-old. I get to the very top of the slide and my brother says to me, "Do you want to go first?" And I was like, "No, big brother, you go first. You're braver than me." And so off he goes and he flies on down the big slide. And next minute it's my turn. And the lifeguard, who I now can probably figure out is about 15 on a summer holiday job. And he says, "You kid, come over here." And I'm like, okay, he's going to tell me something, some information that I need. And he says to me, "You can't go on with your t-shirt." I was like, "Sorry, what?" And he goes, "You're wearing a t-shirt. You can't go down the slide with your t-shirt on." And in this moment, I was horrified because clearly I'd already had some body image issues by the time I was 9. Clearly, I was already trying to cover up my body. I knew there was something wrong with it. And I said, "No," I was trying to not cause a stir. "Excuse me. No, no, no. I have to go down with my t-shirt on. I must." And he said, "Sorry, kid. You either take your t-shirt off and go down the slide or you walk back down the stairs." And I had this moment, this choice to decide whether or not I was going to take the courageous step to take that t shirt off. Or perhaps maybe the even more courageous step of walking the gauntlet, where all of the other kids would laugh and jeer at me. And my fellows here, I wish in a lot of ways that this was a story of redemption, that that little 9-year-old stood up and took the glory and went down that slide and said, "Screw you" to everybody else. But she didn't. She walked on back down those stairs, the 7 flights, people pointing and laughing at her. And she let her big brother believe that it was the height of the slide that had stopped her rather than the depth of her shame. And this kind of set the tone for the next while of my life. Food just continued to be the thing that I did. It was just the thing that I continued to participate in all of my life. And I recall getting to 16 and I'd weighed 100 kilos for the first time in my life. And I was horrified. And so I did what any pre-internet person may have done at the age of 16, and I thought I would go on a diet. And that just meant cutting out everything that was fatty. I didn't really know what I was doing. And because there was so much shame in my being, I would wait till it was dark. And I lived in a town called Canberra. It's the capital of Australia, by the way. And it's very, very cold in the winter, like England cold. And I've lived there too, right? So it's cold. It's cold in the winter. 0 degrees, -6 overnight, that kind of vibe. And because I was so ashamed of my body, I was on this diet and I knew I needed to exercise. So I I would go out in the middle of winter in the cold dark and run as a 16-year-old. But I was too embarrassed to talk to my mum about needing a sports bra. So I would use packing tape to strap down my heavily big bust, and I would go running where no one could see me. And I lost 20 kilos. Yay! And everybody told me how amazing I was and how phenomenal I was. And for the first time in my life, I really saw that I was valued based on my weight. And so over the next 8 years, 9 years, this happened time and time again. I would lose that weight that I had fought pretty hard to lose in the first place. I'd put it back on because nothing had changed in my behavior. I'd put it on, no one would say anything, and I'd lose a bit more. I'd lose it again. In my lifetime, I probably lost and put on 20, 25 kilos about 6 times. And by the time I reached 25, I was living in the UK at the time. I was living on the Isle of Wight, actually, and I was on yet another diet. And yet I was on another diet, and every single time I dieted, I just knew that I was to blame. I was the one that I failed. I hadn't worked. And I recall this one time where I had extra calories left over for the day because I was diligent in counting them. And I didn't keep any contraband food in the house. I'm not going to mention any here today, but it came to the point where I was like, maybe I could have that sweet that was in the cupboard, and I checked the calories, and magically it was the right amount of calories. And so I had one. Yes, I'm still in my calorie range, except there was a pack of 4, and I had 2. I had 3. By the time the 4th one hit my lips, I don't even remember it. There was so much pain and shame and misery of just inhaling it, and I couldn't stand myself. And at the age of 24, 25, it's the very first time that I grabbed an elastic band, I tied my hair up, and I threw my shame down the toilet. And for the next 7 or 8 years, I lived in a bulimic cycle where I would sit in front of watching America's Next Top Model, binging for hours upon hours, and then literally flushing it down the toilet. Around about 2015, I was blessed. I moved house. And in that moment, I was like, no one knew about my secret shame. So I was just like, I just got to not do it in my new house. It was like a fresh start. And I didn't. I didn't. For some miraculous reason, I just didn't binge and purge anymore in the new house. And I thought that I'd nailed it. And I went on this big, beautiful journey of personal development, of learning how to love myself. I really recognized that a lot of the eating was because I hated myself. So I learned how to self-love. And, I became a life coach in that time, and I really learned how to have really positive body image in myself. And I did. And it was a beautiful thing. So much so that in 2022, I wrote a book about it. And, I really learned how to love myself and love my body. And that was what my social media was and my business was. I'd come to that kind of fat acceptance by the time 2022 kind of kicked around. I'd done the impossible. I was overweight, but I loved myself. And I thought that that was the key. And so around 2022, I was like, I'm actually really overweight. I'd had a baby. I was really overweight. And I was like, something's got to change. When the fish and chip shop person, sorry, that was an error. When the takeaway shop person knows your name, but the gym person doesn't, I just knew that there was something wrong. So I knew something had to change. And I was very, very careful with any level of intentional weight loss. I knew that I had to be careful because of my history. And again, I lost about 20 kilos. I changed my mindset. I did it from a place of self-love. It was gentle. It was loving. It was all the things that I thought that it needed to be. And yet when I dropped that first 20 odd kilos, I recognized that there was a long way to go in my body. And the bulimia came back with a vengeance, which I now know is the disease that's progressive. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't realize that it was progressing all that time without me actually treating it. And at the beginning of 2024, I was at the top of my game in so many ways. I was in pretty good shape physically, still with a ways to go, but in pretty good shape, the best I'd ever been. My business was flourishing. I was living on the beach, living a great life. Fantastic. It was so, so good. I just released my second book. Things were great. Absolutely great. Except 3 or 4 days a week, I'd go down to those shops and buy all the food and spend my life wrapped around a toilet. So what was wrong? What was happening? Why did this thing keep pursuing me? And I'm very, very grateful because during that year, the beginning of last year, I decided that if all the things in the world still hadn't satisfied me and all the food in the world hadn't satisfied me, then maybe there was something else going on. And that led me to discover Jesus, and I met him and gave my life to him very, very gratefully. And I prayed regularly. Save me from this obesity. Save me from this weight. Save me, save me, save me, save me, save me. And one miraculous day, I was led into the rooms of OA. I don't even know how. I just knew that I needed a sponsor. I knew that I needed someone to call when I went to go reach because I could feel that I was an addict. And I'd been saying it for years. I can't stop. I don't have an off switch. People are like, just portion control. You're funny. It didn't exist within me. I could watch other people say no thanks happily, whereas I would be obsessed in parties in any kind of food environments. It was hell for me. And so I prayed for an obesity cure, and what I got was a spiritual one. I know we don't call it a cure here, but my gosh, it feels like it these days. because what I saw in the rooms, I remember the first time I did 65 meetings in 65 days kind of vibe. I just came, and the first time I ever had to say, "Hi, I'm Lunaria. I'm a compulsive overeater." I just burst into tears. It took me a solid 10 days to even be comfortable with that term. But what I saw in the rooms was a place that is unique to anywhere else in the world that I've come across. And I've done 15 years of personal development. The honesty in this room, the willingness, the humility to show up and say, you know what, I am flawed, man, and I can't do this on my own. God knows that I tried. I'm sure that so many of us here who have found recovery, or maybe you're not and you're experiencing it right now, tried and tried and tried and tried, and I kept failing, and I kept thinking that it was me. When I met you all in these rooms and I saw the level of humility and the level of honesty, the stories being told around eating out of the bin, or eating dog biscuits, or just stealing food, I had this sense of relief of like, oh, I was convinced that I probably wasn't the only one, but to meet hundreds of fellows who were like, oh yeah, me too, boy, what a relief. And yet what I didn't see was victimhood. I didn't see a whole bunch of people who were like, I'm complaining about the fact that I have this thing. There was experience, strength, and hope. What I saw was a way out. I saw the 12 steps, this structure to which I could follow that would lead me to where I wanted to go. Not understanding that I came in because I probably wanted to lose weight, but I really wanted to just stop this, what I came to know as a disease. Today, I'm nearly 6 months abstinent, and I've never known freedom like this when it comes to food, when it comes to eating. I had this most miraculous discovery recently. I was going to a party. Typically I would always say to myself, don't really like parties. And I went, I had my main meal at dinner before I went, and then I went to the event, and there was food happening and all that kind of stuff. And I had a great time. And as I was leaving the party that night, I was like, why did I have such a good time when I've never had such a good time? What I discovered is that every single party typically has food. And if there was food there, I would be battling constantly between, should I be eating more of that, or I can't, I have to say no. So I'm constantly thinking, I'm distracted by the food. I couldn't have a good time with my people because the food would always draw me back in, and I'm distracted by it, either trying to stop myself from eating it or going full pelter on it, or waiting to the time that I could get home to do it in secret. I would be, quote, good at the party, and then on my way home, stop in the service station and go nuts. And I felt like I was living a double life. But recently, I had this revelation of, wow, okay, so I can enjoy parties. I can enjoy life. I get to go on holidays, and I don't have to think about all of the different delightful things that I'm going to eat, because I'm like, that's just a disease. And yes, my self-development and personal development and all the places that I'd been helped lead me to the point where I was just so ready to get on my knees in this program, because I really was, and I still am. I start nearly every single day on my knees. Actually, I do start every day on my knees. I come out of bed, I get on my knees, and I say the third step prayer. And it's so funny, I say it so many times, and it's not coming to my brain right now. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. And putting God first in my life just meant that everything changes. And it really does. And someone who struggled ever since she was little to meet recovery at my 41st year of life has been, as they say here in the rooms, nothing short of a miracle. And praise be to God for that, because there's no way I'm doing this on my own strength. If I don't rely on my higher power, if I don't rely on Jesus, I don't have sobriety. I do not have abstinence. And so the freedom that I get from this program is incredible. And I'm not currently working with any sponsees, by the way. So if anything in my story has resonated with you, I am so happy to hear from you and maybe help you on your path of recovery. Thank you, everybody.